what the black man and woman needs to know about the nation, about the world, about themselves. Muhammad Speaks It. To order your 12-issue subscription to Muhammad Speaks newspaper, 313-371-7033. 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie is the grand champion of all bean pies. The rich flavor and smooth texture takes this pie to a whole new level of delicious. One bite and you'll understand why people all over the country call daily to order Kareem Bean Pie. 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie.
This bean pie is delicious.
Muhammad Speaks presents Messenger Elijah Muhammad's Teachings by Minister Khalil Shabazz every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. at Muhammad's Temple of Islam, 12609 East McNichols Road in Detroit.
Brothers and sisters, we rise for prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, Soul Masters, dear gentlemen in which we now live. The alone do we serve, and the alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path. Path of those upon whom thou hast spread thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray after they heard thy teachings. Say he Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is to be served, worship to praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was thy true servant and last apostle. Ameen. We'd like to acknowledge the brothers and sisters that extended us the greetings of Assalamu alaikum. We have Brother Kareem Muhammad. We have Brother Captain Hakeem from Virginia. We have Brother Mustafa and Sister Sharice Ali from Ohio. We have Brother Samori and Sister Saliha Samad from New York. We have Brother Minister Jabran Rashad from Chicago. And we have Brother Captain Shabazz from Atlanta. I'd like to say in the name of Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, and in the name of his last and greatest messenger, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, I'd like to greet the brothers and sisters with the Nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum. Today, we like to talk about the Israelites versus the Muslims' true knowledge of self. Because we have, the messenger taught us that the black man must have a thorough knowledge of self to be accepted to or be reunited with our own. And the one thing that happened with the messenger is once he made black popular, that's when everybody started to try to claim the black man is really of this and the black man is really of that. Because in 1968, 1969 is when colleges began to have black studies programs. So the messenger had made black so popular that the black man had such a want to know his history that everybody began to teach that the black man is really a Pan-Africanist. You know, African spirituality is really what the black man practiced in Africa. Then these would come and say the black man was really a Jew because we the original Hebrews and all of that kind of stuff. But we want to start with J.A. Rogers, because J.A. Rogers is my main man. The reason why I like J.A. Rogers over all other historians, because J.A. Rogers was our last honest historian. He would give you credit for what you did. If a Muslim did it, he gave the Muslim credit. If a Christian did it, he gave the Christian credit. If a Jew did it, he gave the Jew credit. He wasn't trying to push a doctrine, a philosophy, or religion. If he saw that a Muslim did something in Europe, if a Muslim did something in Africa, if a Muslim did something in Asia, he gave the Muslim credit. But when you have people like John Henry Clark, he didn't do that. He would say Islam, Christianity, and Judaism came out of Africa. So he would try to make it to seem like African spirituality is where they really got what they got from. It was from African spirituality. But J.A. Rogers did not do that. So let's start with J.A. Rogers, February 12th, 1944, Pittsburgh Carrier. And the name of the article is called Some Consider Study or Negro History as Purely Important. He says with this, I come, because we starting in the middle of the article. He says with this, I come to the meat of my story. He says in 1910, James M. Webb, a Negro barber, also called Reverend, wrote a pamphlet of 49 pages entitled The Black Man, Father of Civilization, Proven by Biblical History. This is the book that J.A. Rogers is talking about. This brother wrote a book that says the black man, the father of civilization, proven by biblical history. Now this is what J.A. Rogers said about this book. He said, now the first thought here is that you can prove very little history from the Bible. He says the stories of Abraham of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth are legends and folklore borrowed by the Jews from earlier writings. So this was just, once again, he wasn't trying to push no religion. He wasn't trying to push a doctrine. He was all about the history. Yes. So even though the black man is the original man, the black man is the father of civilization. But you cannot prove that with Bible history. Right. Because the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us. He said the Bible is 2/3 prophecy. Then he said that the whole of the Bible is talking about the coming of the Son of Man. So the messenger never taught us that this is just documented history. He told us not to take the Bible on face value. That's right. So let's look at what J.A. Rogers is talking about. What's the difference between a legend and history? I forgot to write down where I got this from. But this says the main difference in history versus a legend. It says history and legend are related to the past, events, and happenings. But there is one main difference between history and legend. He says history can be proved by evidence and is considered to be true, whereas legends are perceived to be true, though they are not supported by any historical evidence. That's the difference between history and the Bible. When you're talking about history, you don't say that a serpent in the garden deceived Adam and Eve. That's not history. That's not backed up by historical evidence. You can't say that Moses parted the Red Sea. That's not backed by evidence, because if that was to happen, everybody in the world would have been writing about Moses parting the Red Sea, Jesus rising from the dead. That's not supported by historical evidence. Because if Jesus rose from the dead, that would be world news. Yes. So let's look at another example of J.A. Rogers. Just to give you an example of how much he would discourage black people from using the Bible as biblical history or as actual historical events. Because J.A. Rogers and the Pittsburgh Carrier used to say that so much. Because back in the 40s, that's all black people really knew was the Bible say. The Bible say about this and the Bible say about that. So when J.A. Rogers would tell them that's not history, they would get upset with him. So this comes from the March 11th, 1944 Pittsburgh Carrier. It says, writers of the Bible did not have all the facts to write a good history. It says, clarifies position on Bible as history. It says, Verona M.B. Scott of Fort Worth, Texas, takes me to task for what I said recently about the Bible being inadequate as a source of history. So then he goes on. But let's look at how did the messenger teach us about the Bible. Because the thing about Bus Stop Bishop Nathaniel is they be talking about they can trace their history back to the ancient Israelites. This now is because this Israelite stuff, quiet as it's kept, is becoming real popular. Because the black man already believed in the Bible. And this is the thing that you will find with most fakes. All they do is take what the black man was already believing and just make it black. You already was believing everything in the Bible, but now when this fake come and tell you Jesus is really black, Moses is really black. So let's give an example of how the messenger taught us the Bible. This comes from the Black Man Hope Salvation. Opposition to the truth is punished. This is the messenger teaching us about Samson. The messenger says we must remember the Bible story of Samson. There was a real Samson, and he was very strong, as it is written. He says, but the story of Samson in the Bible has a great significance to it. So first he telling us, yeah, it was a real man named Samson. The real man named Samson was strong, just like it's written. But this is just a Bible story. This is not the actual history of a man named Samson and Delilah. But the story has significance to it. So the story has a meaning. But this story is not actual documented history. So the messenger, he says, however, it is not something just to be taken literally. It is to be understood. Because the one thing about Samson and Delilah, I remember watching Samson and Delilah with my grandmother every time it came on. I remember Samson and Delilah. This was one of the advertised because it was certain parts of the movie that just stood out. The part where she cut Samson's hair off was a part that stands out in the movie. Because according to the Bible, Samson was this big, strong man, and his secret was his strength lied in his hair. Now, we so deaf, dumb, and blind, we thinking that really happened. We thinking that it's a man who was strong in the past. They say he took the jawbone of a donkey. But we didn't say that back in the church. I remember all them old, Samson took the jawbone of a donkey and killed 1,000 people. We used to believe that. We believe that Samson tore down the big building, the pillars, because he was so strong. We never thought this is like a riddle. The story has meaning and it's talking about the black man. Pray do. But in the movie, she said Delilah gets Samson to tell her his secret that his strength lies in his hair. So she cut his hair off. So then not only did she cut his hair off, she poked out his eyes so he was blind. So Samson realized that he'd been tricked. So Samson was mad, but they had Samson in the prison. They locked him up, and he wasn't strong no more. He couldn't just break the chains. So Samson was real upset about the fact that Delilah tricked him. So Samson's hair began to grow back. Then Samson was getting his strength back. So Samson was real upset and mad because they was making a mockery of Samson. So then when Samson got enough strength, he pushed the pillars back and the whole building fell on him and killed him and the Philistines. That's the story. But what did the messenger teach us about this story? This has come from the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Because the thing I like about the messenger is he used to teach us these Bible stories and the meaning of it while real events were happening. He didn't wait until come and tell us the meanings of these stories after black became popular. So the messenger used to tell all the brothers who used to be rioting in the streets that they are strong man Samson.
That's right.
That's what he used to call them. Strong man Samson. You strong but you blind.
Yeah.
That's what he used to say. Oh, praise is due to Allah. Never teaching us that this history is actual documented history. So this is a cartoon because the messenger could write an article. He could put it in a cartoon. He could tell you the truth any kind of way he desired. It was many different forms to how the messenger could get the truth to the black man. So this is a junior FOI selling a paper to a grown man. So the junior FOI says, Muhammad speaks, sir. The brother says, yeah, I'll buy one. So the brother says, see that smoke? Those black folks across town are tearing it up. How come you Muslims don't join that action? The junior FOI said, when you read Mr. Muhammad's words, you'll know he's not teaching us that. The lost found brother says, oh, I don't like what's happening either. If it was left up to me, I'd round up all those fools and I'd... So the junior FOI said, no, sir. Those are our people. And we understand the spirit that's moving them today. He says, Mr. Muhammad says, the rising up of the black man is prophesied in the Bible under many symbolic stories. Not in the history. Not him telling us that the black man is an Israelite and we the true Hebrews and that's talking about us. He said the black man's rise is prophesied in the Bible under many symbolic stories. Praise due to Allah. So the brother goes on. He says Samson is one. He says his hair or knowledge of self and others was shaved off after being deceived by Delilah, the white race. That's one meaning to this story. The hair of Samson, where his strength lied, was the knowledge of self and others. Praise due to Allah. So the white race, which is Delilah, shaved it off. So that's where his strength lies. So when she shaved his hair off, he was not strong anymore. That's an example of the black man. Yeah. Right here in America. So the brother goes on. He says Samson is one. His hair, knowledge of self and others, was shaved off after being deceived by Delilah, the white race. They kept him in prison, made him into a clown. Now his head is no longer shaven. After 6,000 years, his hair is growing back. Delilah's evil deceit has been made manifest, and Samson is angry. He wants to tear down the house of his enemies, but they had put out his eyes. Samson is blind and needs guidance. Another example of this symbolic story, showing you that bus stop Bishop Nathaniel is a fake. Yeah. He is a phony. And with the teachings of the message, we could crush all of them. The same way the messenger used to do back in the day. Because you had plenty of groups back then that used to try to tell the black man what's happening. You had the Black Panther Party. You had Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. You had the NAACP. You had the Southern Christian Leadership. You had plenty different organizations and groups trying to tell the black man what time it was. But the messenger, in his breakdown of the black man, in the Bible, in the Holy Quran, and in black history, caused the black man to want to know more. So that's what caused them in the college and university to want to know a black studies department. But let's keep going. He says the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is the guide whom God put in our midst if they would only accept him to guide his people, not to self-destruction, but to freedom, justice, and equality on some of this earth we can call our own. And then the brother says, I'm going to come to your meeting so I can hear more about that. And this is how the messenger was able to change the black man's mind. We all knew the history of Samson. I remember that from Sunday school. But when you hear the messenger break it down like that, it's like, wow. Yes. I never thought that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. It makes perfect sense when you really look at the story and how it goes down. Because Samson trusted Delilah. Yeah. When Samson wanted to marry Delilah, his parents told him, you can't find a wife from among your own people. Why you want to marry the Philistines were enemies to the Hebrews or the Israelites or the Jews or whatever you want to call. They was enemies to them. So when Samson came to his parents and told him, I want to take me a wife from the Philistines, they was upset. Why don't you find a wife from your own people? This is the exact same thing that the black man is doing today. That's right. Trusting the white race. Trusting them and laying, as the messenger said, when she cut his hair off of his head, he laid his head in her lap. Another meaning. Because in this, Muhammad speaks, we ain't had time to read it all. The messenger break down Samson. He talk about how when she cut his hair off, that he laid his head in her lap. And I'm like, God, that's another. She nursed him. When he lost the knowledge of himself, he put his head in her lap, which they are showing now. But this is different from how they showed in the movie. He was really laying in her lap. Mm-hmm. So she nursed Samson. When Samson lost all of the knowledge of himself. And this represents the condition of the black man today. So let's give another example. This one comes from the July 16, 1965, Muhammad speaks, and it's called the sin of birth control. So the messenger, once again, not teaching us that we the Israelites, not teaching us that we Hebrews, but he teaching us the symbolic meaning to all of these stories in our real life condition. So because the messenger started talking about birth control in the Muhammad speaks like when in the Mr. Muhammad speaks like in 1962. This had come all the way to 1965. So the messenger says, he says today whites say their birth rate is falling off. Why should they want to stop your birth rate? Is it just because their own is decreasing? He said it was the idea of Pharaoh to get rid of the Israelites because their time of separation had come. Rather than see Israel go free and become a great nation in a foreign land, he sought to destroy the Israelites by killing the male child as soon as it was born. He said it was Yaqub's original idea 2,000 years before Moses to destroy that same black child. And he did so through his birth control law on the island in the Aegean Sea. He says it is crystal clear that America has the same intentions through this pill. They are trying to stop the increase of the black man and American Indian and all other dark people under their domination. So this is the message. Teaching us about Israel. He didn't say you are an Israelite. He didn't say you are a Jew and a Hebrew. He said just like Pharaoh did to the children of Israel, he wanted to destroy their increase. So what he did is he tried to kill all of the firstborn before they was born. So when you start to read more of these articles, not only did the messenger use Pharaoh, the messenger also would use Jesus. When Herod wanted to find Jesus, he killed all of the firstborn boys. That was what Herod did, looking for Jesus. He never told us that we are the Israelites or we are the Jews, but these stories are symbolic stories talking about the black man today. Praise be to Allah. And one of my favorite stories that the messenger break down is about Mary and Martha when they saw that Lazarus died. Because I remember that song that Aretha Franklin, because all this stuff, I was a deep down Christian when I grew up. I used to wake up on Sunday morning and my mama was playing gospel music. That's how I lived my whole life. So I remember all this stuff that the messenger was breaking down. So I remember that song by Aretha Franklin. Oh, Mary, don't you weep. I remember that. Oh, and Martha, don't you moan. I remember in Detroit, we used to have CHB. What was her name? It was Martha Jean the Queen. We used to listen to her every Martha Jean the Queen. She used to have she used to have a song she used to play before she came on was Curtis Mayfield. What was the name talking about? Get on the Train. That was the song that Martha Jean the Queen played every time she was coming on. So I remember Aretha Franklin's Mary, Don't You Weep. But I never knew what that meant. So the messenger taught us that Lazarus represents the black man. And he was talking about how it said that Lazarus was dead for 4 days. 4 days means 400 years. Praise be to Allah. Then he was talking about, which was getting me, because he was talking about how Lazarus was in the tomb. But he wasn't dead. He was not physically dead. Because Jesus called his name and he came out. But he was talking about how his eyes was covered with a napkin and his hands was bound or tied together. So the messenger says that the napkin wrapped over Lazarus' eyes represent him being blind, deaf, and dumb. I was just like, wow, blowing me away, because I went back and read the whole story. Then he was talking about when Lazarus was tied up or bound, that meant he couldn't do for himself. Right. He broke that whole story down to the black man. And this is how the messenger taught us the Bible. He never taught us that this was documented history. He said the whole of the Bible is talking about the coming of the Son of Man. He used to write articles called The True History of Jesus. He told us it was like 4 different histories in the history of Jesus in the New Testament. He said just like with Samson, Samson was a real person, just like Jesus, just like Moses. But they weave these stories around these real people to make you think it's talking about something 2,000 years ago. So the messenger said, He said that Jesus' history is wrapped up in the Mahdi, the prophecy of the coming of the Son of Man. Then he said another part of his history is wrapped up in the last message. Another part of the history is wrapped up in the black man. Then the last part is Jesus' actual history with the Jews. So the messenger always taught us the significance of these symbolic stories, to let us to know it's talking about Master Farad Muhammad searching the earth and finding his people deaf, dumb, and blind. Because the messenger represents all of those prophets in the Bible. His life touches every single prophet. Because another thing the messenger said that I never thought about either. He said that the Jews charges the prophets with evil. I never thought about that. He said that the prophets charge the righteous servants of Allah with evil. They charge Noah with getting drunk. We never think about that. Noah just saw God destroy the whole earth according to the Bible because the people was getting drunk, because the people was fornicating, because the people was breaking the laws of God. But the white man, in his book, that the messenger said is mixed with truth and falsehood, will tell the black man that soon after the flood recedes, Noah goes and gets drunk. Who would do that? After you saw God destroy the whole world, Noah tried to save his son and told his son, come get in the ark. But his son told him, I'll go to the highest mountain. So he went to the highest mountain, and Noah saw the flood overtake his son. Only people who survived it according to the Bible is his family. But he would see all of that, but then he'll go and get drunk. Then the white man charges Lot with incest. That's something that common men don't do. But the white man, the Jew, the Hebrew and the Israelite, charges Lot with having incest with his daughter. After Lot saw God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with fire coming down from the sky, Lot tried to save his wife, but she turned, as they say, into a pillar of salt. Lot see all of that. Then he go get drunk. Then he have incest with his daughters. These are the kind of things that the messenger says the white man does to the Bible to add truth or mix truth with falsehood, to blind the black man to what's really going on. Because we are a people who are righteous by nature. So when the Bible talks about the righteous, that's when it's talking about the black man. Because the messenger said God is not coming for a people like as if he has to reform them. He's coming for the righteous. He said we never knew that we are the righteous. The black man is a direct descendant from God himself. Yes, sir. We are not a people who are God's people because of something that we did. We are born a messenger. We are born Muslims. Yeah. Messenger said when you become a Muslim, it's no ritual that we have to do. He said all that we have to do is accept our own and be ourselves. So the messenger taught us. He said that Yaqub wrote the book of Revelations on the island of Pelan 6,000 years ago. He said that Yaqub saw the end of the devil. So the messenger says that God knew what the white race was going to do before he was made. That's where these stories come. Because Yaqub saw the end of the white man before he was even made. So when J.A. Rogers saw these people trying to use the Bible, he told them that these stories that the Jews use, they borrowing these stories from other people. And that's why in Islam, the messenger said, or he taught us, that God sends prophets and messengers to all of the people. The Holy Quran says it's prophets and messengers that we name, and it's prophets and messengers that we don't say nothing about. So when we see the truth, wherever it come from, we accept the truth. Yes. We don't feel like God only dealing with us. God deals with all righteous people, or all people, the messenger said. He said, just like in our flag, he said the righteous as well as the wicked enjoy all of the fruits or all of the benefits from the sun, moon, and stars. That's right. God don't just say, I'm just going to bless the righteous. The messenger said if the devil do right, God will bless him. He said God is a righteous God. Freedom, justice, and equality. Yes, sir. So when J. Rogers saw the messenger, and this is what I like the most about J. Rogers. When J. Rogers saw the messenger, J. Rogers was impressed with the messenger. Because the one thing that people do today is they always talk about the Islamic slave trade. That's one of the things that they do to make us feel like we accepting an Arab religion. But when you look at J. Rogers used to talk about Prophet Muhammad like Prophet Muhammad was one of us. J. Rogers has Prophet Muhammad in your history in the Pittsburgh Carrier. Because he said that Prophet Muhammad was a black man. That's what J. Rogers not only has Prophet Muhammad in your history in the Pittsburgh Carrier, but in World's Greatest Men of Color. He talks about Prophet Muhammad. He says that Prophet Muhammad had black ancestry. Not only did Prophet Muhammad have black ancestry, because I didn't even know this until reading what J. Rogers said about Prophet Muhammad. He talks about Prophet Muhammad's mother. He said that when Prophet Muhammad was 6 years old, he said that his mother, his biological mother, died. So Prophet Muhammad was raised by a black Ethiopian woman. And J. Rogers has her name. So Prophet Muhammad was raised by a black woman. And that's why J. Rogers used to say that the black man was a part of Islam from the beginning. Right. Islam was not a religion. That the black man came after. He said from the very beginning. Because the messenger taught us. He said we must have a thorough knowledge of self. Yes. He told us that the black man is a Muslim by nature. He said that it is our nature to submit to the will of Allah. But he said that the white race was given 6,000 years to rule. So he said Islam was put to sleep in order that the white man could rule. Because the messenger said, if Islam wasn't put to sleep, the devil couldn't rule. So he said that Islam was put to sleep for 6,000 years. He said all the prophets would prophesy the coming of the Son of Man. But he said they would put it under symbols. They wouldn't tell us the straight truth, but they would put it in a symbol or a sign. So he said that God would come in the end and reveal to one person these signs and symbols that everybody didn't know from the past. So he told us that God came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad, July 4th, 1930. He said that he is the long-awaited Savior. He said when the Bible talks about Jehovah, he said Master Farad Muhammad is Jehovah. When the Bible talks about Moses, that's talking about the messenger. The messenger taught us that when the Holy Quran is talking about Muhammad, he said that's talking about him. That's right. The Holy Quran is not talking about Prophet Muhammad. It's talking about Messenger Elijah Muhammad. So the messenger, when J. Rogers began to see the messenger, and he saw his articles being written in the Pittsburgh Carrier, J. Rogers began to honor the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yes, sir.
He saw it because when the Messenger started writing his articles, and this is what I like about J. Rogers, he kept it real. J. Rogers couldn't sell a book. He used to write articles in the Pittsburgh Carrier talking about how hard it was for him to sell a book. He was talking about in the 1950s. It was like 1958, 59. He said, out of all of the books that I have written, he said, I haven't made $100. From all of these books he got, he didn't make $100 from all of the books. J. Rogers started writing books in 1919. So by 1959, that's over 40 years of writing. And then another thing I like about J. Rogers, which makes his word about the messenger mean even that much more to me. J. Rogers never went to college. J. Rogers taught himself Arabic. He taught himself Spanish. And they say he would go himself to these countries and find all of this history. J. Rogers would talk about certain things that was written in Arabic that didn't have a translation in English. So he would put in his book the quotes from these Arabic historians talking about the black man. In the spread of Islam, he used to talk about the black man in the spread of Islam. The black man having empires. The black man, when you go to the world's greatest men of color, when he talks about Asia, he talks about 9 people. And out of those 9 people, 6 of them was Muslims. Then he talked about all the great black people in Africa. Most of them was Muslims. This was J. Rogers. So when he saw the messenger, this is what he said about the messenger in 1959. This is called 1600 Hail Writer J.A. Rogers at Muslim New York Exposition. J. Rogers says, here in America, we have had plenty of leaders, but they have always been the wrong ones. They have selfishly preyed upon us for themselves. But he said, but at last, we have found the right one in Mr. Muhammad.
Right.
Praise due to Allah. He didn't say y'all found. He said we have found the right one in Mr. Muhammad. Because the messenger, even though everybody smear his name now, the messenger name means mud now. But he is the one. The reason why you so interested in your past is because of the messenger. We wasn't interested in J. Rogers before the messenger. Let's go on with what J. Rogers said. This is more of what he said. He says, the thing that impresses me most about Mr. Muhammad's young followers is they are so alive, alert, independent, and honest. Being a writer, many people come to me and take my books and never pay me for them. But Mr. Muhammad's followers get these books by the thousands and even pay for them in advance. This is something that the messenger started when it wasn't popular. Because the messenger in 1959 was still being called a hate teacher. He was still being criticized by the black man for teaching the knowledge of self. And this is why I love the history. I love to read about the hell the messenger caught. He caught hell all by himself. Trying to get the black man to know the true and a thorough knowledge of self. So during the time of the messenger, it wasn't all this hate and competition. Muslims would get the now look at the message. The Pittsburgh Carrier, not his paper. J. Rogers' books is not his books. But he had Muslims by Pittsburgh Carriers They would buy the paper first, then sell the paper. They would get J.A. Rogers books, buy the books, then sell the books to other black people in the community by the thousands. Long before there was a black studies department in any black university, it was the Messenger.
Yes, sir.
But his name is Mud. He Elijah Poole now. He the one who killed Malcolm. But the black man knows the knowledge of himself because of the message. So let's go on even further with J.A. Rogers. So J.A. Rogers says, being a writer, many people come to me and take my books and never pay me for them. But Mr. Muhammad's followers get these books by the thousands and even pay for them in advance. He says not only do they themselves want to learn, but they want to spread this knowledge to the rest of our people. Mr. Muhammad is doing a great work. At last we have found the man who is unselfishly trying to get right knowledge to our people. Knowledge is power. Give our people the right or the light, and they will find their way.
Yes, sir.
This was J.A. Rogers. All his life, he sincerely was trying to give the black man the truth. He didn't care how you got. If you took his books and then he wasn't even complaining. He'd still come out with another book and another book. He would still go overseas and find the knowledge himself. He would publish the book with his own money, just wanting to get the black man the truth. So when he seen the message and saw a black man who also just wanted the black man to see the truth, see, you are the Asiatic black man from the tribe of Shabazz. God came to save the black man. So J.A. Rogers say, we finally have found the right one in Mr. Muhammad. J.A. Rogers had never saw that before. To see a black man, he said, unselfishly. Then when you read about Muhammad Speaks newspaper, how unselfishly, when you look at all of the greats, just like, for an example, John Henry Clark used to write articles in the Muhammad Speaks newspaper. Believe it or not. Even the way he hate on the messenger gave him a shot. When you look at the Black Panther, Eldridge Cleaver, he used to hate on the messenger. When he was in prison, his articles in the Muhammad Speaks news, Stokely Carmichael used to be in the Muhammad. All the greats, the messenger gave them a chance. All he wanted was for you to know the truth. But then they all turn around and talk about him. That was the message. But let's go on even further with the messenger. So J.A. Rogers, in his books, talks about Prophet Muhammad being a black man. I just want to give one example of how what J.A. Rogers was talking about aligns with what the message, because J.A. Rogers used to be off just a little bit. He wasn't saying exactly what the messenger said, but when you read, you understood what he was meaning. He didn't know the whole truth, but he was close enough to where you understand what he's talking about. You will still get a black man his book. Like read J.A. Rogers. This is an example. This comes from The World's Greatest Men of Color, Volume 2. It says Arabia and Eastern Islam. He says Muhammad, born about 56 AD, or 567 AD, died June 7, 632. Founder of Islam. That was the little off. Yeah. Prophet Muhammad wasn't, but you know what he meant. Right. So then he goes on. He says the world's second most important religion and one of the greatest men of all times. He says author of the Quran. Little off. He had a greater influence on Asia North Africa, and parts of Europe than any other individual before or since. This Prophet Muhammad, great black men of color, talking about Prophet Muhammad as if he's one of us. So what did the messenger say about Prophet Muhammad? This comes from the June 30th, 1956 Pittsburgh Carrier. The messenger said, and the title of the article is called The Bible and Quran. The messenger says Muhammad, an Arab, was a member of the black nation. Him and J.A. Rogers saying the same thing. But what else did J.A. Rogers say that I like? He said a greater influence on Asia, North Africa, and parts of Europe than any individual before or since. What did the messenger say? This comes from the January 3rd, 1959 Pittsburgh Carrier. And it's called The Third Attack on the Beast from His Evil Attacks Against the Righteous. The messenger says, he says Muhammad and his work was far more effective on the devil than any other prophet of the past. For that which the Islam and the Holy Quran did not accomplish, the sword did. He says Jesus made no effort to defend his teachings as Muhammad and his successors. So the messenger and prophet and J.A. Rogers saying the exact same thing. So this shows that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching us the true knowledge of ourselves.
Yes, sir.
So let's go on even further with J.A. Rogers. We're going to wrap it up. Because J.A. Rogers used to defend the messenger. He had the messenger in your history. He writing about the messenger. Then in 1964, 2 years before J.A. Rogers died, this is what he said about the messenger. He said, I visited the Muslim school in Chicago, and I saw the children were getting Negro history that would not be permitted in any integrated school and possibly in most public schools. This is the truth, whether we like it or not.
Yes, sir.
Because why did he have to say whether we like it or not? Because people was hating on the messenger.
Yes, sir.
They hated what they saw the messenger and the Muslims do to that hypocrite Malcolm. Look. So John Henry Clark, Dr. Bean, Chancellor Williams started hating on Islam. They the ones who started all that, the trans-sub-Saharan slave trade. Started making the black man to believe that Islam destroyed Africa. But J.A. Rogers never, so we supposed to believe. All this history that J.A. Rogers talked about, W.E.B. Du Bois, all of these historians before black studies departments who was actually going themselves to get the history, actually teaching themselves how to read these lines. They just missed this whole Arab slave trade stuff. And you don't read, I haven't read one word of J.A. Rogers talking about Islamic slave trade. But after the Black Studies Department, when everybody started hating on the mess, that's all they talk about Islam. The Arabs had us enslaved. Their slavery was before the white man's slave. But J.A. Rogers said, he teaching history that ain't none of y'all teaching, like it or not. So he goes on even further. He says, moreover, as I said, they're reaching the man farthest down. Certainly this is a social service good for all of America. This is what J.A. Rogers, when he saw the messenger. He saw the messenger in 1959 all the way up into 2 years before his death. And he still was defending the messenger. He's teaching the black man his history. He teaching the history that none of y'all are teaching, whether you like it or not. You can be mad about Malcolm X all you want. He teaching the black man his great past. Yes, so the messenger, he taught us. He said, I will be the winner whether I'm living or dead. He said you can follow Malcolm X or worship any hypocrite you want. He said those who accept me as the messenger and Master Farad Muhammad is God. That's who will be saved, and we'll see the hereafter. Praise due to Allah. He made it plain. He said, you will not have no excuse. I listened in my clothes. I listened to the messenger one time. He was talking about us not having an excuse. He said at the end, many black people gonna want to blame the white man. Like the white man lying, you know, he mixing the Bible with truth and falsehood and all of that. The messenger said the white man gonna look at you and say, nigga, did not let him teach on the radio. Did not let him have Muhammad speaks message to the black man. You had more access to the truth than anybody of your kind. Say you ain't gonna have no excuse. He said all those who reject me as the message and reject Master Farad Muhammad as God will suffer the most. Yes. That's why he would write at the end of his articles, hurry up and join on to your own kind. Yes. He used to say we act like we got 1,000 years to go. He said we at the door. When you listen to the message, and this in my close, he would talk about his ministers. He said, what time do you have to sit around and be watching TV? What time do you have to go to a ball game? What time do you have to sit around and listen to people tell lies? He said, your people is in the fight. And you acting like, he said, we don't have no time for a little fun. He said, have a little truth. That's what the messenger said. He said, we right at the door. Right at the door, and we acting like we got 1,000 years to go. So, brothers and sisters, we don't want to prolong the time. So I leave you as I came in the Nation of Islam's greeting words of peace of Assalamu alaikum.
Enjoying the show? Help keep us on the air. 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033 to make a donation.
Brothers and sisters, we rise for prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Merciful, sole message day of Judgment in which we now live. The alone do we serve, and the alone seek for thine help and aid. O Allah, please guide us on the right path, path of those upon whom thou bestow thy favors, not on the path of those upon whom thy wrath is brought down, nor those who go astray if they heard thy teachings. Say he, Allah is one God. Allah is he of whom nothing is independent, but upon whom we all depend. He begetteth not, nor is he begotten, there is none like him. And I bear witness that none is to be served, worship, or praise besides Allah, who came in the person of Master Farad Muhammad. And I bear witness that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is thy true servant and last apostle. Ameen. Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us not to do anything to anyone that we wouldn't have done it to ourselves, and treat everybody right, even the devil. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
What the black man and woman needs to know about the nation, about the world, about themselves. Muhammad Speaks It. To order your 12-issue subscription to Muhammad Speaks newspaper, 313-371-7033. 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie is the grand champion of all bean pies. The rich flavor and smooth texture takes this pie to a whole new level of delicious. One bite and you'll understand why people all over the country call daily to order Kareem Bean Pie. 313-371-7033. That's 313-371-7033. Kareem Bean Pie.
This bean pie is delicious.
Muhammad Speaks presents Messenger Elijah Muhammad's Teachings by Minister Khalil Shabazz every Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. at Muhammad's Temple of Islam, 12609 East McNichols Road in Detroit.